Okay, here we go. Clap one on three. One. Oh, there she goes. 1, 2, 3. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash, and as always, I am joined by my co-hostess with the most S, Christy Oxborrow. How you feeling?
You're great. I'm fine.
Fantastic.
Couldn't be more excited to be here. You know?
I couldn't be excited to be here. That feels
That did slip out. That did slip out. It's just been a long week. It's been a long week of trying to shove a lot of things in. And
yeah.
Didn't know I was going to be ready for this. But I was.
Got it.
And you'll know when you read the synopsis that I didn't know if I was going to be prepared.
Every week, as you know, I don't read the synopsis so ahead of time, so I can't wait.
Yeah. It'll be a fun surprise for us.
Listen, I can't wait. I live for it every week. Well, before we get into it, for those who watch rather than listen, they're probably like, has Lauren been taken? Like, is she in an unmarked room somewhere? What's happening? I'm in Toronto.
Yeah.
Oh, Canada. So different setup here. Hoping for the best. Hoping for no tech glitches.
Yeah.
Gonna do the best we can. But there's one other important visual that, again, people listening won't be able to see. But I'll just give you a quick reveal. Sharky's not here. That's the thing. So it's not going to be Sharky's butt.
Yeah.
What it is I've worn a very special shirt. And yeah, it's a Fox Mulder from the X-Files shirt. And I know what you're thinking. Why? And it's because of the recent news events surrounding the aliens.
Show me the bodies. Show me the bodies.
What I love is this man is like, he's part of these classified programs. Christy's still not buying it. I was like, this is it. Finally, it's going to happen. I'm going to have her ear about aliens. And what I'm hearing is not so fast, Ash.
I need to see the bodies. I need to see, and you'll love the, and not photos, because those could be doctored. Take me to the bodies.
Wait a second. You're saying the only way that you're going to believe in aliens is if I somehow, and I love that I pulled me into this, I somehow get to arrange like a personal viewing of these alien bodies?
First of all, if you think I get an opportunity to see alien bodies in person, that you're not going to get yourself in there anyway? I'm going to be
right. I clearly would have been involved. Yes.
Yeah. The second they're like, you want to see the aliens? I'd be like, can I get 2 passes? Passes like a fair. Stop. It's not a sideshow. The thing is, yeah, I get it. I think I'm just like the memes that are already coming out of it, where it's like they tell you that aliens exist, and just the state of the world and the state of your own mental health and everything, you just go, oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. I think that could be it. I think I'm just already overwhelmed with other things that my brain hasn't fully sunk in. But again, I'd like to see, to start, photos of the body. And then if I'm like, that's Photoshop, then I'm going to push for a visit. They're not going to let me in.
I don't think they're going to let you see the bodies. But here's the thing. Here's what I have to say to you. If they can doctor a photo, can't they fake a body? Like, I think at some point
I'm going to get close enough. I'm going to...
Oh, my God.
Look, I've been holding on to this for 40 years. I'm not just going to let go and be like, obviously they're real. You're right. I was wrong all along. I very well could be wrong. Apparently I am. But I like to really look at that proof first.
I guess for me, it's that they're saying they have a vehicle. Okay.
Sure.
And they're saying they were asked explicitly, did you recover the pilots of the vehicle?
Yeah.
And the answer was yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it was talking about that further, he was like, I'm not allowed to say that in a public forum. I guess here's maybe the best I can hope for. This is probably the best I can hope for. Do you feel like, And I understand you're saying you're not budging. You're not budging on whether or not the aliens are real. Okay. Okay. How about this though? Does this new information make you feel
Just I'm sure that this is being legit and that it's a thing, and I should have believed Tom DeLonge all along. Oh, I liked how that went. I'm sure that's where this will go. I'm just such a hard skeptic that I'm like, where's the proof? That's where I keep
we
coming
have
back to
5% more of you. 5%.
probably. Sure. I'll give you that.
That's a win.
But if
I
you
count
think
that
there
as a win.
isn't also a part of me that is almost psychotically more willing to believe that that is a craft from such a far future coming back.
Look, and as I am passionate about time travel.
Yes.
So I will meet you there. I thought the same thing actually when I saw some of the images or whatever, because they're showing images of this like cube shaped craft. Okay. And that it's like not human, etc. I will concede to you that that doesn't necessarily mean to me aliens, but I would absolutely potentially believe that it could be us from the future, and that we just don't know, have this tech. We have no concept of the technology. I mean, how far in the future is it from? We don't know.
Now you're saying, because I have not seen images, you're saying clearly, because I've been yelling about it for 10 minutes already. So you're saying cube shape.
Yeah.
Like the Borg?
Thank you for that.
Look, nothing strikes fear into your heart quite as much as a well done Star Trek villain.
Right.
And the Borg were I didn't like them. They terrified me, and they did their job, is my point.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's kind of hard to see in this photo.
Oh, the photos are grainy. I bet.
They are grainy. Yes, I will give you that. I will definitely give you that. But this is what we're talking, something along these lines.
Oh boy. Is this another like us in the car and you being like, Christy, there's a thing floating. We don't know what it is. And we get closer and closer and you're like, is it? We don't know. It's just hovering there. And then we got close enough and we're like, it's the Goodyear blimp.
But for a period of time, I want to remind you, I stand by that it was a UFO because it was an unidentified flying object.
We had not identified it. Yes, correct.
This is a leaked government photo.
Why does that look like the house from Up upside down?
Okay, this is just...
No, that was just a genuine reaction.
It does actually. It does kind of, yeah.
I mean, it's like a house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again.
I mean, it feels like something.
Well, I love that this is how far I'm going. I would put more money on it being you, because by the time we're to a certain age, there will be the whole, you can put your consciousness in another body and continue to live on. And I feel like there is more of a chance of this being a ruse that you're doing from the year 3500 to get my goat, because you've paid money to get my consciousness to continue on, or you paid the money to come back to do this to fuck with me now in like a fun, playful way. I put more money on that being the option than it being aliens. I get that they've already confirmed it's aliens, but I stand by, I truly think future you would be like, so if I can make her think it's aliens, I could see that.
I could see that being a way that I would absolutely use my funds for sure.
Yeah.
Because at this point, this deep into the future, you're right. Like, we are living forever. We're just not in our normal body. How about this? What if in the future there's a Matrix type world where we're all in bathtubs of goo with large cords stuck into the back of our heads?
Nightmare.
And what if, nightmare scenario. what if, because the earth has become uninhabitable for human bodies, perhaps, oh, now we're getting dark, there's some sort of alien race that we've created somehow, or enslaved, let's be honest, and we're putting our consciousness into the aliens, and so those aliens are coming back. You know what I'm saying? Is it possible that it's a hybrid of two things, is my point.
Oh, I think it's more than possible. I saw, I don't even know. It could have been a reel, it could have been a tweet, but they don't call them tweets anymore. Doesn't matter. I saw an image on the internet that was some sort of comment of like, what if when you die, someone just removes your VR goggles and goes, so how was it? And you realize your entire life was just this simulation that you had signed up to play. And I can't stop thinking about it, and it freaks me out to think about.
Yeah, I don't love that. I don't love the idea of that.
No,
Because then it's
no,
like, who was I on the other side?
that's the thing. It's like, is this me?
Or is that me?
Right? Like, I don't know. It's weird to think about. It's also weird to think about waking up in a bath of goo with cords coming out of you. That would freak me out the
Yeah.
most.
I think that's fair. I think it's fair to say for me also that if I woke up in a bathtub of goo with a giant plug in the back of my head, I think that might be, I don't think they maybe explored that element of it as much as they should have. Like that, people could be having heart attacks at that reveal. Like that's no joke.
Yeah, they came up with an idea and went, okay. And then somebody else in that room went, but don't you think? And then they went, no, we have enough. And that was
Yeah.
it.
I guess for me, it's like the 20-minute sequence of someone trying to understand what's happening maybe wasn't super compelling viewing. It was just, for me, it was an important kind of like connective piece of tissue in the story. I just think
Sure.
that there's people like that would panic so hard. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Oh, yes. I mean, I just can't stop thinking about how they end up with that little hole in the back of their head.
It's
It's
going to
like,
get infected. I couldn't
oh,
stop thinking
well,
about it when I first saw it. I was like, how are they treating that? Is there
have,
just a constant drip of antibiotics coming through that tube? Like,
have you ever seen, I believe it's a Canadian film, Existence?
of course.
I should have known. Um, because that,
David Cronenberg.
of course, because that one, it's when they like lick the end or lube up the end of that weird thing and then stick it. Oh, it's
Yeah.
that, because that deals with somebody had an infected hole, although they called it a port, so it was less dirty. But they had a dirty port or something.
I can't say it enough, folks. If you've got an infected hole, please seek medical attention.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
was that Jude Law? That was a young Jude Law,
I
wasn't it?
I want to say yes.
Jennifer Jason Leigh, a lot of
Yes.
other fine people, but they're the only ones. Oh, I don't
Yeah, I'm
remember.
seeing Jude Law.
Nice.
1999. How about it?
Was another time.
It was a
Wow.
very different time. Jude Law, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Willem Dafoe,
No shit.
Callum Keith Rennie. We've shouted
Fuck.
him out on this
Oh,
show
Christy,
before.
I'm angry. Oh, I'm angry that I did not think of that.
Callum Keith Rennie also should be noted in the more recent X-Files movie. So that comes around full circle. Also, shout out to Canadian, I'd say it, treasure, Don McKellar, also in that one.
Oh, yeah. He was
And of
also
course,
in Last Night, wasn't he?
he
With
directed
Sandra
Last
Oh?
Night.
Yeah.
I love that movie so much. I love that movie. It should be noted, in high school, my high school boyfriend and I, in our film studies class, we decided for our final project to basically just rip off Last Night. We were just going to do the exact same premise. So for those of you who don't know, This is a fabulous Canadian movie. You absolutely should watch it. I think it holds up. But it's about everyone knows that the world is going to end. And so it follows the stories of all of these people and how they're spending the last 24 hours. And it's one of these things where they know that at a very specific time, the world is going to end. So yeah, so my high school boyfriend and I, the second one.
Well, I love that. I felt like it was going to be rude to say, and I love that I'm saying it anyway. I was going to go the hot one.
No.
Okay. Duly noted. I know where
Yep,
we're
you
at.
know who I'm talking about. So
I absolutely do.
so yeah, so anyway, so we just made a version of that. We made a short film that was the exact same premise, and we got a good grade on it. And to that I say, we didn't deserve it. I don't think we deserved it. It wasn't an original story.
Now, did it have to be an original story? Was that what was the assignment exactly? Because if it was driven towards you have to come up with the story versus, you know, your cinematography, etc.
Well, let's put it this way. We were not given any guidance about what the story needed to be. We were never explicitly told, don't rip off another movie. I guess maybe I'm thinking now in retrospect that maybe that was implied. But to your point, we didn't technically break the rule. And I think that a lot of the things that we got good marks on was the cinematography, was how it was shot.
Of course. See, then you did deserve the grade.
I want you to know, though, I think that the film that I made in high school that I was the most proud of was about a teenage girl whose friends turned on her, mean girled her. I played the title role. And
I wouldn't want it any other way.
She, being me, started to kill them. This is a little horror short we made. And what was the method of killing? The answer is a toilet plunger. I guess something happened as a child that she had some sort of incident with a toilet. Anyway, so I would like plunge their faces until they died type thing. But what I was really proud of was like, we didn't have the ability to like cut in music. So I would just have music playing in the room really loud as we were filming. And then it was like, I would try and like act out what I was doing in time to the music. And I did. So I was very excited about. But what the to me, the like real crowning moment of the film was we made the credits. I wrote them on pieces of paper and then we floated them in a toilet and flushed each one of them down. Like each of the credits went down. It was the school, probably not great for the toilet. I understand, but it looked great on film is my point. Film. Well, it was a mini DV tape, so I guess it was film technically.
I mean, obvious first question. Is there access to this?
I don't know where it would be. I got to try and find it.
Because I'm going to say it. That is viewing I would like to do.
Yeah. 110%.
I mean, I never did like videos for school. Oh no, there was one video we had to make, but it was specifically just I guess we didn't have to make it a video. We chose to. We had to do something for one of the Shakespeare plays. I want to say like Hamlet or something. And my duo chose to do a newscast because you had to do it but make it today. So we did a newscast about Ophelia or something like that. I don't really remember.
That sounds cute.
But other than that, then like the video I made with you. That's pretty much my video knowledge from high school.
And I like that you say the video I made with you as though it was one sketch, one skit. It was an opus.
It was a series of a series.
It was an entire show. It was a sketch show. Really?
Oh yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, if just imagine if we'd been given like a solid week to plan it out, taken somewhere to buy props and costumes, and then given the camera, imagine what that would have looked like.
Yeah.
Because
top notch.
I think instead it was we need something to keep these busy bodies out of our hair. Here's a camera, go. You have it for the weekend. I feel like that's more how it went. And then 100%. Suddenly we were like, shit, what do we do with this? Got to come up with something. But I think if we were given some solid time, I mean, we still did some solid work.
We did.
Wayne's World, but we were their little sisters taking over their show for an evening.
Shayna and Martha. That's
Yeah.
adorable.
Yes. And I think it only happened because we happened to have a Wayne's World hat at the house. And we were like, well, that's all we
Yes.
need. That's all.
And to be honest, it was.
Oh, I think we carried the rest of that.
Carried. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
In the end, we didn't need the hat, but God, it was useful. It was useful.
I guess what I'm asking you is, does it mean anything to you that this man worked for the former National Reconnaissance? He was the former National Reconnaissance Officer Representative of Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena.
Stated earlier.
Oh, I have a voice. I don't want this voiceover going. I guess what I'm saying is, does it mean anything? Does his credentials mean anything to you about the UFOs?
Yes and no. Because how do I know he's not, a Nepo baby in this world? In like maybe daddy's the head of the unidentified unit or something. And it's like, well, we got to give Joey a job because otherwise he'll be living on my couch forever. I mean, I'm sure this guy went to schooling and earned his job, but my point is, I'm such a hard skeptic that
yeah, I get it. I get
I'll
it. I just
around.
was. No, you don't have to. You don't have to. You're the Scully to my Mulder. It is what it is. I guess what I'm hearing is,
yeah,
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Maybe this is the time I need to put together a real presentation now that I have this new information.
I mean, I see it come. I see there being like a dossier of this man's background.
Yeah. What I know I need to find is pictures of the bodies, a background report, and possibly a criminal background check on this man specifically. I got it.
Oh yeah.
I got it.
If I find out that this guy like fucked around and damaged some people in some sort of like fraternity stunt, I'm not gonna be impressed.
Thank you for fraternity stunt. Amazing.
Yeah, I may have slowly lost my mind. That is possible.
Well, some would say we've been watching it in real time for the last 3 years. Anyway, I'm kidding.
No,
I put myself in
accurate.
that boat.
That's
I put myself in that too.
Yeah.
Well, listen, before we get into it, I got to ask you the question on my mind, and I'm sure everyone else's. What you drinking over there?
Oh, tonight I'm doing a water, and I'm doing a Slurpee because I haven't done one in a few days, and I was jonesing. I'll say it.
I like that.
Yeah.
I've got a water. I've got a Diet Coke. On the break, you know what I've been into since I've been home? It's summer in Toronto. I am all about the ciders right now. I'm guzzling ciders. So I might get one on the break because I've got some in the fridge. To be completely honest, I was fighting a day-long hangover today. I haven't been hungover all day. And here's the thing. It wasn't that it was like I was so hungover from drinking so much. It was more just like a low level thing. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was like not, again,
there
was
headache that is there and it just won't go away.
Yeah. Because it wasn't like I went super nuts. I mean, I, had a few drinks, but I wasn't crazy. And then just all day I had like the malaise. And I think too, because it's so humid.
The temp. Yeah.
It's taken it out of me. But I took a long nap, and you know what? I became as fiddle, as right as rain. Shout out Mary Poppins. I believe that was Dick Van Dyke's lines in that movie. It doesn't matter. They don't care, Lauren. All right.
They should. Dick Van Dyke and the Queen herself, they should care.
Treasures, both of them. I don't want to talk about the fact that we know that we will likely outlive both of them. I can't think about it.
I will have to take a day to I need to come up with some sort of alert system for my family so that the second they hear it, it's not unlike an alert that pops up on your phone if there's like a tornado or a missing child. I need one to come up on my family's phone that's like, there's a celebrity death that has taken her by surprise.
Yeah.
Get out of her space. She needs to be able to cry unhindered. She can't have you around to see that.
Yeah.
Let her be.
Let her go.
Yeah.
Let her go.
I need them to have that because that would be helpful for them.
Of course. Of course. Well, listen, this week we're talking, of course, the McDonald's monopoly scandal. I got to say, I am such a huge fan of that documentary. I can't wait to get into all of it with you. And I also want to remind you that last week I did tease that there is one player in this story that if there was a dramatized version of this story, I would want to play. So I'm also looking forward to your guesses on that.
I just want to point out that at the bottom of today's thing, it does say my homework. And there is a specific section where I talk about it.
Oh my God, I'm just reading ahead now. Christy's homework. Who does Lauren want to play in the movie? I like that this has made it. This has made it to the official timeline for tonight's episode. I couldn't be happier.
You don't normally give me a task. You are
I
normally
don't.
just like, hey, this is the episode we're doing. Good night. But that was while you're at it. Here you go. So I had to put it in there because, you know, it's who I am.
Well, then it's who I am. Well, listen, let's get into it. If you're not familiar with this story, make no mistake, have no fear. We're going to get you up to date right now. I just read the first sentence. This is going to be the best acting of my life, trying to get through this without laughing. Okay, here we go. Oh, Jesus, this is... Okay. Here we go. McDonald's. The true crime and cocktails, home away from home, and the land that brought us Daddy Grimace. But throughout the 90s, McDonald's was being used in a massive scandal involving more than $20 million. To quote Stefan from Saturday Night Live, this case has everything. An ex-cop abusing the system, a Mormon doing an illegal favor for his foster father, an obnoxious FBI agent trying to make a name for himself, a former fugitive drug dealer, and a mob widow with zero fucks left to give. How did this crime manage to fly under the radar for 12 years? And how did it finally get shut down? Christy Oxborrow investigates.
The synopsis is the last thing I wrote today.
I
don't know if you could
absolutely loved it.
I've never once started with an sort of moment, but
picture this.
Yeah. So there isn't a disclaimer today. There's like a very light thing that I mentioned once very quickly, but I felt it was okay that we're just going to go through because this focuses more on the white collar crime as opposed to, the bloody stuff that we normally deal with.
And I could speak for myself. It's always nice to have a non-murder true crime, right?
Yeah. I'm the most excited for the lack of sexual assault.
That was really nice. What I was saying. I was saying that without saying it. Yeah, it's yes.
Yeah. But something a bit lighter. And look, I did watch the miniseries. Gosh, did it have to be 6 hours? It was enjoyable because every time it's ending an episode, you go, wait, what? And then you have to get into the next one. But 6 hours.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. When you asked me about what day to record this week, I had not finished them yet. And I went, I can do that. Just too many things at once going on. But look at that. We made it. So
we did. We always do.
In early 2001, the FBI office in Jacksonville, Florida, received an anonymous call about a scam involving the McDonald's monopoly promotion. Agent Richard Dent, who received the call, wrote a few words about it on a Post-it note and stuck it to his computer monitor while he worked on other cases. A young agent named Doug Matthews saw the note and asked if he could look into it because Doug was bored with the healthcare fraud cases that he was currently dealing with. Richard gave Doug the green light, so Doug called the anonymous source, whose number was listed on the back of the Post-it. The person gave Doug 3 names: Robin Colombo, Buddy Fisher, and Gloria Brown. The source said that these people had all been top prize winners during previous McDonald's Monopoly promotions, and somehow they were all related. Now, before I get too far into this, a few bits for clarification's sake. Monopoly was first patented in December 1935 by Parker Brothers, who had purchased the game from its creator, Charles Darrow, earlier that year. Darrow allegedly invented the game in 1933, a year after he played an Atlantic City version of The Landlord's Game. What's The Landlord's Game? Oh, just a game invented by Lizzie McGee in 1903, patented a year later. Lizzie tried to sell the game to Parker Brothers in 1909, but they declined. After playing a later version of Lizzie's game at a friend's house, Darrow decided to just copy the game, including writing down all of its rules. And then a year later, he started selling it as his own game, Monopoly. And it's not that Parker Brothers weren't aware of what happened, because when they bought the game from Darrow, they also paid Lizzie $500 for the rights to the Landlord's Game to avoid any future legal issues. And speaking of Lizzie, she got married for the first time at the age of 44. She remained with her husband until his death nearly 30 years later. I only mention that randomly in case anyone listening likes that Lizzie went against the statistics, maybe finds it hopeful. Who knows? But regarding
Who
that
would that
game,
be? Who
well,
would
I don't
that
know.
be?
I don't know, but I bet she's stunning. Stunning, and she currently looks like she's being taken. And yet taken and yet forced to still perform for the show.
That would be my luck. It would be like, we've taken you. Also, we have a podcast set up. We love the show.
I mean, dear listeners, it's not funny. Do not take us.
It's not funny. It's not funny at all.
But we
It's not
like
funny
the
at all.
idea that they let us continue the show.
I'd be like, well, I guess my life isn't threatened. I mean more to them alive. There's something.
Look, you say taken, I say angelic. You look angelic.
Bless.
There's a glow.
Bless you.
It's nice. Oh God, but for real, hashtag justice for Lizzie. Because that's some
Yes.
bullshit. Anyhow, in the first year of its release, Parker Brothers sold 278,000 copies of Monopoly for $2 a piece. Because that's just like 1930s pricing, folks. In 1991, Hasbro purchased Parker Brothers, including the rights to Monopoly. Then in 1987, our beloved fast food chain McDonald's first ran a Monopoly promotion where customers could collect stickers on Monopoly properties in the hopes of winning one of the prizes, which could be anything from like food, video game consoles, cars, boats, house, cash. The top prize was $1 million. The very first promotion claimed there were 40 million worth of prizes to be won. That would be equivalent to over 107 million in 2023. And honestly, McDonald's could afford it because the Monopoly promotions increased their sales by like 40%. Customers could find these game pieces on the sides of McDonald's cups, fry boxes, on certain sandwich packaging. There were also random pieces in magazines and newspapers, and the option to just go into a McDonald's and outright ask a cashier for a game piece. The pieces had to be given for free so that customers weren't essentially paying to gamble. So one other thing I want to clarify before we get too far. I watched the McMillions HBO miniseries, which I will reference quite a bit throughout this. And Agent Doug Matthews, I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. God, he rubbed me the wrong way.
Interesting.
No offense to Doug, because hey, I know you can't please everyone. He just came across as so arrogant to me that I just wasn't a fan. I'm just trying to shut this down before anyone starts putting Doug and Blanche in the same sentence.
Oh, sure.
But I do know Like, if just even a quick Google, everyone's like, he was the star of the show. And I'm like, really? Okay. Okay. Again, it's something for everyone. Just that
100%.
one wasn't for me. In the documentary, Doug talks a lot about how boring his job was and how he was looking for something exciting, which is why he grabbed onto the prospect of the McDonald's case. He shared the new intel with agent Richard Dent, and suddenly Richard was interested. But being a seasoned professional, Richard knew there was no point in trying to build a case if the assistant district attorney, Mark Devereaux, wasn't willing to prosecute. Once Mark's office was able to confirm the three names given by the anonymous source were in fact all connected, Mark was fully on board with an investigation. In the beginning, the FBI didn't know how far this potential scam reached or if McDonald's was somehow involved, so they had to tread very carefully and only have a handful of agents involved. But when their investigation stalled, they had to reach out to Rob Holm, the head of global security at McDonald's, and invite him for a private meeting. While trying to have this serious conversation about a potential scam, Agent Doug Matthews showed up in a golden suit. Doug said he considered himself to be the George Costanza of the group. I consider him to be an arrogant jackass, but you know, either way. But I do understand a lot of people on the internet like him, so you know what? To each their own. Rob suggested that the FBI have a meeting at McDonald's headquarters in Chicago. Only a handful of people were allowed in the meeting, and no one outside of the room knew what was discussed. The FBI wrote down the three names the source had given them and asked if anyone in the meeting knew any of these people. They said no. The FBI then pointed out that all three people were connected to each other, including two who were related. They just happened to have different last names, which, happens. The odds of that happening naturally is astronomical. The odds of finding a winning piece was 1 in 206 million. So the odds of two family members finding pieces, I mean, come on. So for three people who knew each other personally to all win big was incredibly sketchy, and the FBI knew that some sort of scam was happening. They just needed to get McDonald's on board to work with them, especially since McDonald's said they were about to run another Monopoly promotion. The FBI told them the only way to discover who was behind the possible scam was to run the promotion knowing that it was going to be fraudulent and that the scam was going to keep going. And after taking time to think it over, McDonald's agreed. But since no one knew if someone in that company was involved, the entire thing had to be done very discreetly. At the time, McDonald's outsourced their marketing to a company called Simon Marketing Limited. In fact, Simon Marketing was responsible for the creation of Happy Meal toys. So, as a child of the 80s, we thank you for brightening our lives, Simon. The company designed the Monopoly game, and it ran once a year since 1987. But the FBI didn't know if someone at Simon was potentially involved in the scam, so everything was kind of on a need-to-know basis, and most people didn't need to know. Since the game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was very popular at the time, the investigation was called Operation Final Answer. And I honestly think that naming investigations would be my favorite part of being an FBI agent. I don't think my suggestions would ever make it. I would just have a lot of fun making them, I think. Like, Operation Do You Want Fries with That? Operation Late Night Munchies. Operation Fart Attack. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
I'm writing that down.
I'm just saying. Why not? I mean, the fact that one of the names they suggested was Operation Unhappy Meal and they didn't take it, I was disappointed.
Yeah, that's a missed opportunity.
So the FBI knew that to build a case against these potentially fraudulent winners, they needed to find a way to record each winner telling the story of how they won their prize so that the winners would be locked into that specific story and it could be later used against them, hopefully, when they went to court. The FBI also wanted the winners to say what they did with the money so they could potentially seize certain assets when the time came. To get the winners on film, they came up with the idea to do an undercover ploy that would look like a TV commercial featuring past winners. The entire crew would all be undercover FBI agents, and while Doug Matthews wasn't certified to be undercover, he got special permission to join the team. When asked what role he would play in this fake production team, Doug said he didn't know anything about commercials, so he suggested he should be the director because, quote, they don't do shit.
Oh,
Again, I'm shocked that people weren't annoyed with him. It's, again, my point. But
I just felt a lot of directors' buttholes just clench. You know what I mean? Like it was just like,
well, it was wild to me that he said it, and even more wild that they were like, "Yeah, we'll keep that.
yeah.
We'll keep that in there." And I'm like, "All right, well, you do you." So the agents set up a fake production company called Shamrock Productions, but they also needed a McDonald's corporate employee to make things seem legit. Enter communications manager Amy Murray. She had only been at the company for about 6 months when they brought her into this special project. She wasn't allowed to tell friends, family, or even coworkers what she was working on because, again, Operation Final Answer needed to ensure the scammers didn't catch on to the investigation. The most recent winner the commercial focused on was Michael Hoover, a 56-year-old casino pit boss from Rhode Island. Michael was very eager to do the commercial, so the undercover FBI camera crew show up. They bring Amy Murray. She hands Michael the jumbo check. When asked how he won, Michael said he'd fallen asleep during a trip to the beach. He woke up, he was covered in like a light dusting of sand. So Michael went down to the water to wash off his legs. He accidentally dropped his towel and his brand new copy of People magazine into the water. Michael said he threw them out on his way to the car and then stopped at McQuaid's supermarket on the way home to buy some things for dinner. While at the checkout, Michael noticed a copy of People magazine, and since he didn't get to read the other one before it was ruined, Michael decided to buy another copy. Inside the magazine, Michael found a Monopoly sheet with 2 game pieces, one of which was a $1 million instant prize winner. Couple of things. You dropped the magazine and your towel in the water, and you threw them both out on the way to the car. Michael, towels are meant to get wet. They're reusable. And I know it's just proof he was lying about what happened. Some could also argue he was nervous in front of a camera, but that statement stuck with me. Also, the particular People issue he was referring to came out July 23rd, 2001. The cover story featured the cases of 4 young women who had gone missing between 1998 and 2001. The women included Amy Bradley, Jill Behrman, Molly Bish, and Chandra Levy. As of August 2023, only Jill Behrman's case has been solved, although the suspect still claims to be innocent and it's a whole thing. But of the 4 victims, Amy Bradley is the one who has still, to this day, never been found.
Right.
But Michael Hoover and his phony beach story. This equally phony film crew asks Michael what he planned to do with the money. Michael said he was going to buy a boat and name it Ruthless Scoundrel, which is a little on the nose, Mikey.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, as director, Agent Doug Matthews suggested they should go to that beach where it happened and film there. Michael agreed. And while filming at the beach, some random drunk guy grabbed the jumbo check and just started running down the beach, and Agent Matthews had to tackle him. As ridiculous as the moment was, it was somehow not the most ridiculous moment throughout that entire miniseries. but we will get into that later. So, Operation Final Answer obtained a warrant to tap Michael's phone. And after the fake production team left, Michael called his friend Andrew Glom, who went by AJ, and said the crew just left. They believed everything. The two men laughed about how Michael fed the story about the beach, how the crew seemed to have no idea he was lying. Throughout the call and a few calls after, the name Uncle Jerry kept coming up, but the FBI didn't know was that a nickname or not. So they started going through phone logs of the past winners to see if any similar phone numbers came up. And sure enough, each of the winners called the same number multiple times right before they won, and again multiple times right after they claimed their prize. But then after that, they never called the number again. The FBI discovered the phone number belonged to a man named Jerome Jacobson, who went by Jerry. So, was this Jerry the Uncle Jerry that was mentioned in the wiretap? I'm not going to drag it out for you because, yeah, he was. That was the thing. I keep calling it a documentary, but the mini series, it just kept like every episode. It was like, is it him? We don't know. Could be this. No, it is. Just let's say it as it is. That was absolutely Uncle Jerry. The big kicker here was that at the time, Jerry was working the head of security for Simon Marketing, the very company that was running the McDonald's Monopoly promotion. Not much is known about Jerry's youth, but we do know he was a police officer in Hollywood, Florida in 1977. Marcia Derbyshire, another former police officer, said she met Jerry when he showed up on her doorstep to tell her boyfriend was cheating on her. I don't know how he knew or if that was accurate, but soon after, Marcia and Jerry started dating and they were married in Tennessee in 1981. One morning, Jerry started struggling while he was shaving, and by noon, he couldn't lift his arms. They went to the hospital where it was confirmed that Jerry had Guillain-Barré syndrome. Multiple people who spoke in the miniseries about Jerry said that he had MS, and while they are both autoimmune diseases of the nervous system, they are also very different things. MS damages the central nervous system, meaning like brain and spinal column. Guillain-Barré damages the peripheral nervous system, which is the nerves outside the brain and spine, which those nerves help the nervous system communicate with the rest of the body. So Jerry was forced to leave the police force and move to Atlanta to be closer to a hospital that specialized in the treatment that he needed. In 1982, Jerry had improved enough that he wanted to return to work, and he was hired for security at Simon Marketing. And while Simon Marketing came up with the entire Monopoly promotion, they outsourced the game pieces to a printing company called Dittler Brothers, which was incredibly secure. To get into the building, you had to go through a guard. I love that kind of sounds like you have to have a duel. I did not mean it that way. Choose your weapon. You have to go through a guard. You know what I meant. Then you have to sign in at another desk, and then you have to go through a second guard. There were cameras around the facility, and in the vault where the game pieces were kept, it required 2 keys to turn at the same time, like a nuclear sort of situation. Once the trucks were loaded with rolls of game pieces, the doors were locked and then sealed with tape so you could know whether or not someone had tampered with it. The rolls in this case were the lower end prizes, like the free food and the lower cash amounts. The top prizes, however, had to be dealt with in an even more secure way. When the big game pieces were in the building, a member of Dittler Security, a member of Simon Security, an independent auditor, and a customer service rep all had to be present in the moment. The game pieces were inside of a sealed envelope that had signatures and a special seal so you could easily tell if it had been tampered with. The envelope was carried in a locked briefcase, which required combinations from both the auditor, Hilda Bennett, and the head of Simon Security, Jerry Jacobson. Jerry was even handcuffed to the briefcase, and Hilda was not allowed to let Jerry out of her sight once he had the briefcase. Once the big winning pieces were brought in, they were placed on food packages at random intervals by Brian Littrell, who worked quality control at Dittler, not to be confused with Brian Luttrell from the Backstreet Boys. Jerry's wife, Marcia, worked as head of security at Dittler from 1987 to 2000. And Brian, who worked at Dittler, not the Backstreet Boy, was Marcia's son. With multiple connections to the game pieces, one might quickly assume that Jerry's wife and stepson might have been involved in the fraud, and that was how Jerry was getting the winning pieces. However, Marcia and Brian both claimed to not know anything about the scandal. So at the time, it was still unknown as to how Jerry was pulling this off on his own. When a customer found a winning piece, the pieces were then sent to the Simon Marketing Redemption Center in Los Angeles, where the envelopes would be opened on camera by a person wearing gloves to prove the authenticity of the piece. Each piece had a code on it that could only be seen under black light. So the FBI knew that the winning pieces that were coming in were legit, and they needed to figure out how the winners were actually getting them. Even with Jerry involved, the strict security surrounding those game pieces left the FBI questioning how it was happening and how far-reaching it was. But the main thing seemed to be that Jerry would sell the winning game pieces to family and friends of friends, and then he'd also get a cut of the prize money. In 1989, Jerry gave his stepbrother, Marvin Braun, a $25,000 winning piece. Marvin cashed the check and split it with Jerry. In 1991, Marvin, who ran a maternity clothing store, started approaching clothing manufacturers that he knew from his frequent trips to New York, just to see if anyone was interested in doing business with Jerry regarding the monopoly fraud. One connection led to another, and soon Jerry was working with a man only referred to as Uncle Dominic. Whether Dominic was his real name or not, I don't know, but Uncle could be a sign that it was mob related, because calling someone uncle within the mob is a sign of respect, hence why Jerry Jacobson became Uncle Jerry. In 1994, Jerry approached Marvin again, this time with $1 million instant winning piece. Marvin turned him down. When Jerry refused to take the piece back, Marvin flushed it down the toilet. Marvin later said he truly believed that Jerry was done with the scam at that point. He thought that was it. That was the end of it for him. Marvin was wrong. In November 1995, someone in Texas found the $1 million instant win piece, and they mailed it anonymously to St. Jude's Children's Hospital in Dallas. Even though one of the rules of the promotion is the prize cannot be transferred, McDonald's chose to honor the donation, and they gave St. Jude's $50,000 a year for 20 years. It was later determined that Jerry had been the anonymous donor, and it was said he only did it in the hopes that it would earn him a more lenient sentence if he was ever caught.
Wow.
I know. Also in 1995, Jerry's scam partner, Uncle Dominic, introduced Jerry to Gennaro Colombo, also known as Jerry. So to spare any confusion, I'm just going to call Jerry Colombo Columbo. Not to confuse him with the Peter Falk character, but it's just the best we're going to have at this point.
Yeah.
So Columbo was related to the Colombo crime family, which was one of the main 5 mob families in New York. Uncle Dominic was also somehow linked to the Colombos, but soon after Colombo and Jerry became friendly, Uncle Dominic passed away, so Colombo became Jerry's new partner. That same year, Colombo magically won a Dodge Viper in the Monopoly promotion. However, since Colombo was a larger gentleman, he could not fit in the vehicle, so he had to take the cash instead. which is like $50,000-$60,000. Also in 1995, Columbo met a firecracker of a woman named Robin. There was such an intense chemistry between them so quickly, they were engaged just 2 weeks later. By the time they got married, Robin was pregnant. She gave birth to the couple's son, Francesco, known as Frankie, in May 1996. Robin said Columbo was always looking for a way to make easy money. Not only did they have winning McDonald's Monopoly game pieces hidden in plastic containers in their freezer, they also had a gray M&M candy wrapped in foil. In the 90s, the M&M company did a promotion where if you find the imposter gray piece, you could win $1 million. Robin said she had no idea how the candy ended up in their possession. During Operation Final Answer, Agent Doug Matthews came up with the idea of bringing all the past Monopoly winners together for a reunion in Vegas. Basically, it was the same reason they filmed Michael Hoover. They wanted to get the winners to say how they won on camera so that it could be recorded and used against them later in court. And while Doug's boss liked this reunion idea, he didn't really like the idea of Vegas, mostly due to cost. So they came up with the idea that they'd contact the winners and film them prior to going on this Vegas reunion, which wasn't really going to happen.
Right.
Amy Murray from McDonald's corporate contacted the past winners to say they were planning a Vegas reunion and they needed to be interviewed first. The phony Shamrock Productions was back at it, meeting with past winners at the Marriott Hotel to record the story of how they won, as well as some promotional B-roll kind of stuff. One of the undercover agents in Shamrock this time was Agent Doug Estrella, who, I'll say it, has a vibe. And that's the only reason I'm mentioning him here. He was considered the lighting guy on the production team. So if you want to talk Blanche and McMillions, that's the Doug that we're talking. Anyhow, moving on. It is worth noting that ADA Mark Devereaux said that since the winners each contacted Simon Marketing and McDonald's after their wins on their own, them doing this undercover operation was not entrapment. He wanted to make that very clear, even though the FBI was absolutely hoping the winners would lie on camera, which almost feels a little like entrapment. But Mark's the lawyer here, not me, so we're trusting his judgment. One of the first interviews during this new undercover operation was William Fisher, known as Buddy, who won $1 million in June 1996. When he first won, Buddy refused to do a commercial, but I guess a free trip to Vegas was too much to pass up. Buddy claimed he found the winning piece in the McDonald's insert in the Sunday paper. He said he called a lawyer first because he just didn't believe it. Thing is, he couldn't remember the name of the lawyer he spoke to, or even the town that the lawyer was in. Also suspicious was the fact that Buddy was just sweating buckets on camera. He was stumbling over his words and just overly uncomfortable. And yes, some of that could be nerves, but it was very clear that Buddy was simply just trying to remember his original story. But one thing Buddy didn't mention was that Robin Columbo was his daughter. Robin later said her father approached her shortly after her wedding and said, quote, "I want the big one." And with so many people knowing about this scam, it's hard to believe that it remained hidden for as long as it did. One of the next people that they interviewed at this fake reunion was Gloria Brown, who won $1 million in May 1997. Gloria was a single mother who claimed to have discovered the winning game piece while cleaning out her car. What no one knew at the time was that Gloria was good friends with Robin Columbo. And at the time, all the big prize winners were white men, and Robin suggested that maybe they choose a woman of color as a winner so that people didn't start getting suspicious that all the winners for white men. So Robin said she helped pick some of the winners, giving game pieces to her friends just because she wanted them all to be happy. When Gloria won, she told McDonald's she was living in South Carolina. However, she was really living in Florida at the time. Many of the winners lived in the same area, but they gave different addresses to McDonald's when claiming their prize. The winners wanted to seem more spread out and less obvious than it was. Gloria later admitted that Colombo made her put her voice on an answering machine at the house of one of his cousins in South Carolina, where Gloria was claiming to live. Gloria also admitted that Jerry sold her the piece for $50,000 with the agreement that Colombo would get $500,000 of the winnings. Gloria had to mortgage her house to get the money to buy the ticket in the first place. But during the undercover operation recorded interview, Gloria was very short with her answers and didn't give a lot of detail. She also repeated herself a lot, which, as we know, is often a sign that someone is lying.
I mean, the details of this it's been a while. I watched this when it first came out, so I've forgotten a lot of this, and it's intriguing me as much as it did when I watched the documentary. It's truly such a wild story. Let's take a quick break, grab a drink, hit the can, and we're going to be right back with more on this McDonald's scandalous episode of True Crime and Cocktails. Okay, here we go on 3. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We are, of course, discussing the McDonald's monopoly scandal. Before the break, I was getting real excited because I was starting to remember some little tidbits that I know that are coming. So let's get right back into it.
So throughout their marriage, Robin and Colombo had some problems. They both just, to me, seemed like big personalities constantly butting heads with one another, which probably explains the intense chemistry they had at the very beginning. But anytime Robin would threaten to leave her husband, Uncle Jerry would offer to buy her a new car. He'd offer her a lot of money, just anything that would keep her with Colombo. I don't know why Jerry was so invested. I'm guessing because Robin would have been a liability if she'd gone out on her own, knowing what she did about the operation. It was probably easier to keep her close so she wouldn't, rat them out. Once during a fight, Robin said she threatened to go to the FBI about the whole Monopoly scandal, and she told her husband she wanted a moving truck at the house the following day and she was leaving him. Colombo simply told her she wasn't going anywhere. And then Uncle Jerry called and just said that Robin married the wrong man. And then Robin claims in the moment that Jerry proposed to her. I don't know how much we can trust that, but Jerry did get married a lot. So maybe he did ask. I don't know. But according to Colombo's brother, Frank, Robin and Colombo got into a lot of fights. Frank claims Robin would get physical, hitting Colombo with a telephone and punching him in the face. Robin fully admits to hitting him with a phone receiver when she discovered him talking on the phone to his mistress. Colombo met Lee Casano at an airport where she worked. He flirted with her and then gave her some money, which is an interesting choice in meeting someone. The two started an affair, although Lee claims she had no idea that Colombo was married at the time. Lee said that one day Colombo pulled out a bunch of winning Monopoly game pieces and told Lee to take a flight to Philadelphia. When she arrived, Colombo picked her up at the airport, drove her to a McDonald's location so she could go in and cash in her winning piece. Lee won $100,000. Colombo then tried to earn money in a legitimate way by opening a gentleman's club in South Carolina. It was called the Fuzzy Bunny, and it included women dancing. But to quote Colombo, the women weren't fully nude. It was classy. And that's what I love, I think, about Mob, and that's why I'm so drawn to it, is because, I mean, these women are in like very tiny shorts, sometimes bikini tops, sometimes just pasties, but to him it was classy. It was hearing him say it was classy. Oh god, it really got into my soul. I was charmed by it. But the community fought Columbo on being in that area and they kept trying to get him shut down. At one point, the complaint was the club was too close to a school. So Columbo tried to change the club into a church and he renamed it the Church of Fuzzy Bunny and put Bibles on all the tables. There was still alcohol and gambling and women half half nude, not fully nude. It was classy. Dancing everywhere, but Bibles so it could be church. Columbo told reporters he was just trying to earn a living for his family. And speaking of his family, on May 7th, 1998, Robin, Columbo, and their son Francesco were driving to Georgia to look for a place to build a new house. While on the expressway, they were hit by a large truck, which dragged them 250 feet before they hit a concrete wall. Robin was driving, Columbo was in the passenger seat, and Francesco was crying in his car seat. When the Francesco's crying got to be too much, Columbo took the child, who was about 2 at the time, out of his car seat so he could lie down. Soon after, they were struck by the truck and sent into the wall. All three survived the initial crash. The jaws of life were needed to get Robin out of the vehicle. She needed a few stitches in her head. Francesco suffered a broken arm and a bump on the nose, whereas it might have been a different situation had he remained in his car seat because it was crushed during the accident. So the fact that they took him out, which probably makes all parents now go like, oh, you took a child out of a car seat in a moving vehicle, would make you sick. But the idea that that's what saved the kid's life also makes you ill. Columbo suffered a broken leg and managed to crawl out of the vehicle. At the hospital, Columbo was placed in the ICU, where he told his brother Frank about $15,000 cash that he had in their car's glove compartment, and then a suitcase full of cash that he had hidden at Robin's parents' house. However, when Frank arrived at the impound lot, the cash from the car was gone, and the suitcase was missing from Robin's parents' house as well. To this day, Robin denies any involvement in that missing money. While in the hospital, Columbo's health started to go downhill, and eventually he fell into a coma. What doctors believed was just a broken leg turned out to also be internal bleeding and broken ribs. Columbo was taken off life support 2 weeks later. He was just 33 years old. Columbo's brother described him as, quote, a combination of Al Capone and Rodney Dangerfield, which is a beautifully dated reference. Is he the first person to mention Rodney Dangerfield since the 90s? It's possible. As a kid, I was obsessed with the 1992 movie Ladybugs, starring Rodney. It is listed as PG-13, but when I rewatched it as an adult, I quickly learned it is not a movie for children. But that seems to be my MO as a kid, to watch movies that weren't appropriate for my age, i.e. Grease 2 and Mannequin. But those movies molded me into the weirdo that I am today, so I regret nothing. But also, my main interest in Ladybugs was my deep, deep love of Jonathan Brandis. Those baby blue eyes.
Of
Get
course.
out of town.
Beauty.
Jonathan Brandis was peak 90s boy. He was right up there with like Jonathan Taylor Thomas, Devon Sawa, and Leonardo DiCaprio. I could talk about the 90s forever, but I'll stop. Back to our story. So Columbo's family blamed Robin, saying she barely visited Columbo at the hospital. Robin later said, quote, I really didn't think he was going to die. After Columbo's death, Robin really struggled. She had become accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and without her husband, the money ran out, which is another reason I don't believe she tried to have him killed. Not to be crass, but Columbo was worth more to Robin alive. She was not going to financially gain anything from his death. So, what would her motive be to have him killed, especially when it was a risk to her son? I just don't believe she did it, but to this day, Columbo's brother Frank thinks otherwise. He also thinks that Robin took the money because when he went to the house after Columbo's death, all of his brother's prized possessions were gone. Robin said that they had been robbed. The Columbo family just doesn't believe her. And since Frank didn't trust Robin, when he was at her house, Frank grabbed the 4 or 5 Monopoly winning pieces that were stored in the back of Columbo's freezer, and he destroyed them simply because he didn't want Robin to have them. Frank and his family also believed Robin arranged the accident to get rid of Columbo. I don't know Robin personally, but again, I just don't think for a second she would have willingly put her son's life at risk. If he wasn't in the car that night, maybe she could have orchestrated it, but since he was in the car, I don't think she would have arranged that as a hit. It's possible it was simply a terrible accident. I don't know how thoroughly it was investigated. But if it wasn't an accident and Robin isn't a suspect, who would want Columbo dead? He had ties to a well known mob family, so the list could be lengthy. But also, what about Uncle Jerry? Is it possible Jerry believed Columbo was becoming a liability? Or maybe he was simply jealous over the fact that Columbo got a lot of press after his Monopoly win, as well as during the issues with his gentleman's club. Is it possible Jerry wasn't the nice guy everyone originally thought? At first, Jerry was described as generous and well liked, but he was also described as manipulative and not really that nice. According to some of his ex wives, things started great and then took a turn. And when I say wives, I do absolutely mean plural. There are at least 6 women that Jerry has been married to. There isn't a lot of information about them. The first wife was named Phyllis. Then he married a woman named Carol, with whom Jerry had a son named Jared. Jerry and Carol got divorced when Jared was about 3 years old, at which point Jerry just kind of bounced from his son's life. A decade later, Carol went after Jerry for back child support, so Jerry finally started seeing his son again. So this already paints a picture of what Jerry is really like. He abandoned his child and then didn't pay child support for years. Not the best dude. Jerry then married Daryl Tolbert in 1973. They divorced 3 years later. Daryl later said the relationship went from good to bad to worse. In 1981, Jerry married Marcia Derbyshire, who had 2 sons from a previous marriage. And apparently, Jerry did not get along with the children at all. Brian Littoral, Marcia's youngest son, said Jerry had a bad temper and a short fuse. There was a time when Jerry was shaking Marcia's son Michael and just constantly banging his head into a wall. Michael was about 9 at the time. Marcia had to physically get in between them for it to stop. She said she left Jerry after that, but he started stalking her at work.
Oof.
And since then, Jerry has been married to a woman named Allison and then to a woman named Linda. Do these moments of violence mean that Jerry was capable of putting out a hit on Columbo? It's possible, especially if Columbo was putting the scam in jeopardy in any way, although I never saw any sign of that. There could have been a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't know. I do know that one of the men that Jerry recruited in this scam said Jerry once told him if there was a problem, the recruiter would get a visit from Jerry's cousin Guido. Was that a legit threat? We don't know. But after Columbo's death, Jerry didn't miss a beat and he brought in AJ Glum to fill Columbo's spot. AJ started taking drugs during a trip abroad in 1979, which led to his cousin asking him to get some Quaaludes, which somehow seamlessly transitioned into AJ becoming a drug dealer. In 1982, AJ was caught during a sting operation and arrested over 6 ounces of cocaine. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison and given 30 days to report to the prison in Alabama. However, when his 30 days were up, he just kind of said screw it and flew to New York instead. He remained a fugitive for 16 months, but was caught after he bought a Ferrari in Germany and had it shipped to Long Beach. I don't even know.
Yeah, it's dumb.
Yeah. After prison, a friend gave AJ Uncle Jerry's phone number. AJ initially declined, but within a few days, he agreed to at least discuss the scam. And soon, AJ was one of the biggest recruiters that Jerry ever had. He gave winning pieces to friends like Stanley Warwick of Chicago, who won $1 million in April 1999. He gave them to guys he met in prison, like Victor Marchitello of Pittsburgh, who won $1 million in March 1999. During his time with the scam, AJ made 10 people winners, and he made himself $614,000 off those winners. Another one of AJ's winners was Michael Hoover, who you may recall claims he fell asleep on the beach, dropping his People magazine in the water. Jerry then brought in another recruiter, a man named Noah Baker, who went by the name Dwight. Now, Dwight had a stroke in the early 80s, which led him to losing his house in 1985. By 2000, Dwight's real estate development company owed $30,000 in back taxes. Then Dwight injured his spinal column in an accident when his tractor rolled down a hill. While he was recuperating, Jerry offered to sell Dwight a winning piece for $100,000. But at the time, Dwight didn't have the money, but he said he knew someone who did. Dwight and his wife Linda had 5 children. At some point, their son became friends with a kid named George Chandler. When George was 12, he left home for whatever reason, and he was taken in by Dwight and his wife, and they just kind of became George's foster parents. At 15, George quit school to start working full time. Dwight approached George, who is, of course, now an adult, and offered him $1 million winning piece for the low price of $100,000. Dwight claimed he was getting divorced and he wanted to hide the prize money from his soon-to-be ex-wife. At the time, George was a single father of an 8-year-old son, so he agreed to cash in the game piece, believing he was doing Dwight a favor. George was set to receive $50,000 a year for 20 years. Then when Jerry told Dwight that there was a game piece worth $500,000, Dwight requested to take it himself, and he made arrangements with his wife's sister, Brenda Phoenix. The plan was Brenda would cash the check and split it with Dwight and his wife. Dwight set up an address for Brenda in Asheville, North Carolina, again, to spread out the winners so it didn't look obvious. When he didn't hear from Brenda for a while, he discovered Brenda was making a run for it. Dwight and Linda followed Brenda to the airport and then forced her to remain with them until she cashed that check in their presence. Around the same time, Operation Final Answer was able to witness a meeting between Jerry and Dwight where they exchanged an envelope of money for an envelope of Monopoly winning game pieces. This led to the FBI referring to Takedown Day. On August 21st, 2001, Operation Final Answer was going to make some arrests. However, they didn't want to tip anyone off, so they had to arrest several people at the same time. And since they were spread across the country, agents were flown to specific cities in advance to make the arrests happen simultaneously. They also required the help of agents from other bureaus, I guess you could say. To coordinate with the other offices, Operation Final Answer faxed a 30-page dossier that laid out the entire plan and gave the other offices enough information that they'd be able to do arrests on their end. However, the person who sent the fax made a large error. They hit Greenville on the speed dial, thinking that was the FBI office in Greenville. However, it was actually the Greenville News.
Oh my God, that's right.
To tell you that my jaw dropped at that reveal, wowza. The entire operation had been on the down low and so hush hush for months. And then someone fucks up and faxes the entire plan to a newspaper. It's just wild. Of course, no one will admit to making this error. ADA Mark Devereaux said it absolutely wasn't him, and he even outright blames Agent Doug Matthews for it. Doug just simply says he's never used speed dial before, so he never would have hit that button, ever. Couldn't possibly have been him. Never.
Mr. Gold Suit, huh?
Of course. Of course. He's never going to admit to being wrong. Come on. Regardless as to who made the mistake, the FBI had to drop everything and fly to Greenville to convince the newspaper not to run the story. A story that the public had no idea about, which would have been huge for the Greenville News to break. And since the information was just handed to them, they would have been well within their legal rights to publish something. But after speaking with the FBI, they chose to hold off. Publishing that information would have completely fucked up the arrests and the entire operation that had been ongoing for months. But the Greenville News agreed to sit on the story in exchange for an exclusive. To quote ADA Devereaux, quote, can't say we bribed them, but we gave them the opportunity to take a photograph following an arrest. When a grown man says, can't say we bribed them, it means you did.
It means they absolutely bribed them. Yeah.
100%. And very quickly, speaking of potential fax errors, according to an interview with Vulture, one of the directors of McMillions said that the day the FBI was trying to get a wiretap on Jerry Jacobson, there was almost a problem. To get a wiretap done, they have to fax a subpoena to the phone company and request the phone company put a tap on a person's phone. The phone company employee who receives those fax requests was a woman named Linda, Jerry's sixth wife.
Oh my God.
But somehow the FBI got so lucky because Linda just happened to be out sick that day. So she didn't see the request before it was put through.
Wow.
Which would have absolutely fucked up their case early on, too. But also you didn't look into who he was married to at the time. You didn't look into this in advance. It was just like oh, thank God. And it's like, but guy, okay. Anyhow, so with the Greenville News error fixed, August 21st went on as scheduled. 8 people were arrested that day on charges of conspiracy and mail fraud. The 8 people included 49-year-old Linda Baker and her husband, 49-year-old Dwight Baker. They were arrested in Westminster, South Carolina. 44-year-old John Davis was arrested in Granbury, Texas. 56-year-old Michael Hoover in Westerly, Rhode Island. 56-year-old Richard Huey in Anderson, South Carolina. 50-year-old Brenda Phoenix in Indianapolis, Indiana. And 58-year-old Uncle Jerry Jacobson in Lawrenceville, Georgia. The last person arrested was 58-year-old AJ Glum in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Agent Doug Matthews described AJ as, quote, easily the most danger of anybody else. What makes me think that the FBI didn't know how violent Jerry Jacobson could be? Maybe they didn't know, but Doug was probably just assuming that AJ was violent based on his previous stint in prison. It also just feels on brand for Doug Matthews to exaggerate about something to make himself seem more impressive. Allegedly. Doug wanted to be the first to make an arrest that day, but AJ was in his home behind a locked gate, so they had to wait for him to come out of the house. But AJ wasn't moving, so Doug called the local sheriff, had him approach the house, and ask AJ to come out and see if he could identify some people who were caught robbing houses in the neighborhood. Once AJ left that gate, he was arrested. AJ even referred to Doug Matthews as an asshole. So I've never felt more vindicated in a moment, but neither here nor there. But so after the arrest, the past winners were all interviewed and eventually arrested, including Gloria Brown, Buddy Fisher, and George Chandler. George contacted Dwight, who told him he had nothing to worry about. He hadn't done anything wrong. George, of course, was the guy that Dwight gave the $1 million piece to and asked him to cash it because Dwight was going through a divorce and didn't want his ex-wife to get the money, which is still illegal, but it was also a lie. He was not going through a divorce. Not to mention the fact that Dwight was George's foster father throughout his teens. Dwight later said, quote, "I did everything in my power to protect him from this." No, Dwight, you didn't. The only way you could have protected George would have been if you had just left him out of it entirely. By bringing George into the scam and making him an accomplice, you're immediately not protecting him. George said, quote, "If you don't have trust, what do you have?" And again, George didn't realize what the scam was, so I have compassion for that. But he went through with it because he wanted to help Dwight hide money during a messy divorce. So it's wild to me that George is sitting on his high horse talking about trust when he fully agreed to hide money that Dwight's wife would have been entitled to if they were actually divorcing. The FBI also spoke with Jerry Jacobson's stepbrother, Marvin Braun, and Colombo's mistress, Lee Casano. Robin Colombo was also interviewed. However, she was already in jail on check fraud at the time. She was still trying desperately to maintain the lifestyle that she'd become accustomed to while her husband was alive. Most of the people were let out on bond, including A.J. Glom, even though he was a fugitive in the 80s. That didn't seem to matter. They just let him out. Dwight Baker put up 3 plots of land to be able to make his $200,000 bond. At the time, the Monopoly scandal was the biggest news story. That is until a few weeks later on September 11th, when suddenly the scandal got pushed aside in favor of coverage of the terrorist attacks. The scandal trial went down in 2002. The only reason they were actually able to make a trial was because the fraudulent winners mailed in their winning game pieces to Simon Marketing to verify their authenticity. And since they did so knowing the pieces were obtained illegally, it was considered mail fraud. And in America, above all else, no one fucks with the Postal Service. Which is great, because without it, we wouldn't have a trial in this case. And helping with that trial was Jerry Jacobson, who cooperated with the FBI to give them a full list of the fraudulent winners. But easily, the most exciting part of that trial was when Jerry Jacobson took the stand, because at this point, no one knew how he was how he was pulling this off. As you may recall from earlier, the lower end game pieces are printed at a company called Dittler Brothers. The company also placed the game pieces in pairs on McDonald's packaging. The higher end prizes were done elsewhere and brought to Dittler by an auditor named Hilda Bennett and the head of Simon Marketing Security, which was Jerry Jacobson. At the time, the head of Dittler Security, Jerry's wife Marcia, and a service rep were also required to be there when the high-end pieces arrived. Now, the high-end pieces were carried in a briefcase that was handcuffed to Jerry's wrist. The briefcase had 2 locks on it. Jerry only knew one combination. Hilda, the auditor, knew the other. Inside was an envelope that contained the winning pieces. Once the pieces were in the envelope, it was sealed with a special silver seal and signed by the people present. The whole point of the auditor was she was to ensure that Jerry and the briefcase never left her sight. However, when they were at the airport preparing to fly to Dittler Brothers, Jerry would go into the bathroom. And since Hilda was a woman, she couldn't follow him in there. Jerry would lock himself in a stall, open the briefcase, because by then he had looked over Hilda's shoulder to learn her combination. He then used a small penknife that he always carried, because, yes, even at an airport, pre 9/11 flying was a completely different thing and far more relaxed than it is now. So Jerry takes out this knife, opens the seal, takes out the game pieces, replaces them with other low end game pieces that he had carrying with him. The outside of the envelope had the number of pieces inside, so he just pocketed the high value pieces, replaced them with the same number of low value ones. Then Jerry replaced the seal with a new one, and the envelope would appear untouched. Thing is, the company who made these special seals sent Jerry a sheet of the seals by mistake. Without them, he likely would never have been able to pull this off. And by this entire thing, I mean steal more than $24 million in cash and prizes over the span of 12 years. Between 1989 and 2001, there were almost no legitimate winners of the top prizes in the McDonald's Monopoly promotion. When the scandal was made public, McDonald's responded by giving away $25 million in cash and prizes to randomly selected customers. They also responded by ending their relationship with Simon Marketing, and since McDonald's was 98% of Simon's business, they struggled to stay afloat. When they lost their contract, they then lost their contract with Kraft, then they were forced to shut down. Dittler Brothers also closed because of the scandal, and all because of Jerry Jacobson's greed. Just to point out, he was working as a security guard for Simon Marketing. He was making $70,000 a year. That is equivalent to about $200,000 a year in 2023. Jerry also admitted that during the scam, he stole up to 60 winning game pieces, and usually he'd charge $45,000 to $50,000 a piece for them. In the end, a total of 53 people were indicted on charges of mail fraud and conspiracy. 48 of those people pleaded guilty. Many of them, we don't know their names because they were never made public. Some whose names are only mentioned like randomly once in an article, and that's it. But anyone who purchased a game piece basically was indicted, including Jerry's nephew, Mark Schwartz, who paid $45,000 for a $200,000 winning piece in 1998, and Jerry's butcher, who made a similar deal. Mark Schwartz was sentenced to about a year in prison. Jerry also sold game pieces to a random guy he met at the airport in Atlanta and to different members of his classic car club. Again, most of them we aren't familiar with. So let's look at what happened in the trial with those we might be familiar with. Michael Hoover pleaded guilty in September 2002 to one count of conspiracy to commit mail fraud. He was sentenced to 6 months of house arrest, 3 years probation, and forced to pay restitution. Gloria Brown was given probation and forced to pay $300,000 in restitution. She was also told she was not allowed to have contact with Robin Colombo. The two women have since reunited closer to like 2020. Jerry Jacobson's stepbrother, Marvin Braun, was sentenced to 2 years of house arrest and probation. He cut off all communication with Jerry after the scandal became public. A.J. Glom was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison and ordered to pay restitution. AJ is the only person that they interviewed who said he would absolutely do this again in a heartbeat. I think he just likes the excitement.
Yeah.
But Dwight and Linda Baker pleaded guilty. They were sentenced to 6 months house arrest and 12 months probation. Dwight was excommunicated from the Mormon church and was required to pay $1.5 million in restitution. George Chandler, who got involved in this because of Dwight Baker, was sentenced to probation. But George, again, still adamant it's not his fault. He says he was duped. I get that he's a victim in a way, but for his defense to be, I didn't know I was committing fraud, I was just trying to help my friend hide out assets during a messy divorce, is wild because intentionally hiding assets is also a crime, George.
Yeah.
I will not let that go. George filed an appeal, and in 2004, a 3-judge panel overturned his conviction. This means not only can George never be tried again for that crime, it means he also no longer had to pay any sort of restitution. 4 other men also had their convictions overturned by that same panel. I very, very briefly mentioned the name Stanley Warwick. He won $1 million in April 1999 thanks to a game piece he purchased from A.J. Glom. Stanley was set to get 20 annual payments of $50,000, and he received 3 of them until they stopped in May 2002 due to the scandal coming to light. So I absolutely understand why McDonald's stopped paying that particular amount. Stanley then died in 2003. And in a bold move of pure audacity, in 2005, Stanley's widow, Naomi, filed a lawsuit against McDonald's requesting the remaining $850,000 that she believes her husband was owed. Plus, she wanted an additional $1.3 million for lawyers' fees and damages.
Of course.
It is wild to me that she really believed she was entitled to that money, even though her husband committed a crime to get it. There has been no word as to what happened to that lawsuit. I need to believe it was thrown out. Neither she nor her husband legitimately won that money. So it's wild that she's like, oh, okay, I get that this is a big crime and everything, but like, where's the rest of our money? It's like, you don't get it. Just, I can't. So William Buddy Fisher, aka Robin Colombo's father, was sentenced to 3 years probation and ordered to pay $300,000 restitution. Buddy passed away in July 2008 at the age of 69. Buddy's daughter, Robin Colombo, was sentenced to 18 months for her role in the scandal, but she put her time behind bars to good use and wrote a memoir called From Mafia Widow to God's Child. It was released in 2006, and she has announced plans to release an updated version since the McMillions miniseries was released. Robin was easily my favorite part of the entire series, like the time when she said something negative about Jerry Jacobson, and then she calmly said, quote, I don't care if he has a bullet with my name on it. And then so coolly just goes, we all gotta go sometime. And then there was a bit at the end where they were trying to have like a really poignant moment showing Robin at her husband's graveside. But for some reason, they show her walking through the cemetery and she falls and makes this loud, like, ah, moment. She doesn't get hurt. But like, why would you leave that moment in? It was just ridiculous. Oh God, it makes me laugh to think about it. But we'll circle back to Robin in a bit, but Jerry Jacobson was sentenced to 37 months in prison and ordered to pay 12 million in restitution. He was released from prison in October 2005 and still pays monthly restitution to this day. As of 2020, Jerry was living in Georgia with his seventh wife. And according to an Atlanta newspaper, Jerry was described as being in poor health in 2018. But to the best of my knowledge, as of August 2023, Jerry is still alive. So Jerry Jacobson managed to successfully run this monopoly scam from 1989 to 2001. It went completely under the radar, and if it hadn't been for the anonymous source that contacted the FBI in the first place, Jerry likely would have gotten away with it, or at the very least, he probably would have gone on longer. So who was the anonymous source that led to this massive investigation? Well, Jerry Colombo's mistress, Lee Casano, admitted she owed $50,000 in taxes. After Colombo's death, she had no money. So Lee called the IRS, explained the entire situation to them, and she believes someone from the IRS contacted the FBI. However, according to the feds, if someone at the IRS knew about the scam, the entire investigation would have been a joint effort. But since the IRS wasn't there in any way, that means that they didn't know. So if it wasn't Lee, who was it? Well, if you recall, the anonymous source originally gave just 3 names: Robin Colombo, Buddy Fisher, and Gloria Brown. What do those 3 people have in common? Robin herself. Buddy was her father, Gloria was her friend. So it almost seems like the anonymous source had some sort of grudge against Robin and was looking to get her in trouble. Robin thinks the source was Colombo's brother, Frank. And Frank, who is quite a character, if I may say, according to him and his wife, Heather, Colombo gave them a $1 million winning piece free of charge as a wedding gift in November 1996. The couple left it in the back of their freezer and never touched it. But one thing about Frank that I want to needlessly focus on, and this is going to seem ridiculous, but I can't let it go: his coffee order. Now, in the McMillions miniseries, Frank is filmed getting coffee in a McDonald's drive-thru. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I could be way off here. But his order has rattled me since the day I heard him say it. He ordered 5 sugar and 10 cream, which
Nope.
feels closer to a glass of milk than a cup of coffee at this point. Maybe I'm wrong. And hey, no
You're not.
judgment. You like what you like. But Frank ordering 10 cream in a single coffee made my jaw drop as much as the moment I learned the FBI faxed their entire investigation to a newspaper. But probably more shocking than his coffee order was the fact that Frank claims the anonymous source, the person who started all of this, was none other than his own mother, who was only ever referred to as Ma Colombo. Frank said that in 2001, Ma had custody of her grandson Francesco because Robin was in prison for check fraud and grand theft auto. Ma knew that once Robin got out, she'd take her son back. And Ma wanted to do everything in her power to keep the kid. So Ma Colombo anonymously contacted the FBI and only gave them Robin's name, her father, and Robin's friend Gloria, in the hopes that Robin would go down for the scam and remain in prison. She also gave Robin's father's name because if Robin goes to prison, she didn't want the court system to give the child to Robin's parents. So she was just putting everyone out of the way so she could get that kid. And it makes sense because at that point, Ma had nothing to lose. Her oldest son was dead. And since her other son, Frank, wasn't involved in the scam, her family couldn't be hurt by this. Best case scenario, she gets prolonged custody of her grandson. It also didn't hurt that Ma blamed Robin for her son's death. So, what better way to get revenge than to send Robin to prison? Of course, that is not how it worked out. Robin was given the 18-month sentence for her role in the scandal. Once she was released, she regained custody of her son Francesco. There was a custody battle between Robin and her mother in law, but in the end, Robin did win. And somehow, all these years later, the women now seem to be on good terms with each other. Robin said she was now the favorite daughter in law, which makes me wonder what happened between Frank and his mother, because Frank and his wife seem to have been completely estranged from the rest of the Colombo family to the point where they have no relationship with Francesco. And because this story doesn't stop making random twists, as of 2020, Frank Colombo's son, Vinny, worked for McDonald's.
Oh my God.
Frank made the joke, quote, "McDonald's has been very good to my family." Again, I'll never get past that fucking coffee order. Anyhow, in August 2018, Fox Studios announced plans to make a movie about the Jerry Jacobson story with Ben Affleck attached to direct and Matt Damon attached to star. I don't know if the project is still in the works, but if it is, I would like now to present the homework that I was given at the end of the last episode. When we first mentioned we were talking about this case, Lauren told me after I watched the documentary, I needed to decide who I thought Lauren would play in the movie. Now, there are a few options here. There's Jerry's ex-wife, Marcia Derbyshire, who is a no-nonsense Holly Hunter vibe. I thought maybe Lauren would want to play her simply because throughout the entire time she's there, she is petting a tiny sleeping dog. And then there's the less likely choice of George Chandler, who got the $1 million piece from his foster father, Dwight. Now, I know this is a more controversial choice, but once I saw George and his very obvious love of karaoke, I didn't want to rule him out. And then there's Robin Colombo. The second she came on the screen, before she said a word, to myself out loud, I yelled, "That's the one." And then when Robin started oversharing about smoking part of a joint every night, even though it wasn't like leading into anything relevant to the scandal they were talking about. And then when Robin got upset and started using a towel as a tissue, I truly believed that I had chosen correctly. And if there was any doubt that I was right, the second she fell over in that cemetery, I said out loud to myself, definitely her. So to answer last week's question of who does Lauren want to play in the movie, my official answer is Robin Colombo.
And you could not be more correct. Yes. For all of the specifics you named also. I think, yeah, her falling in yeah. I'm so excited to rewatch this now, but yes, you nailed it.
God, it's halfway through the 6th episode where it's just her walking and then like it's the way she says as she like just slowly just slowly falls over.
Yeah.
Oh God, it cracks me up. Just know that was a lot of fun. It was fun to have a homework on top of a homework. You know, it was
I like that.
It was like a bonus question on a test that I'm gonna struggle to try and answer because I know I'm probably failing that test and I'm gonna need those bonus points.
Yep.
So that's that was nice. That was fun. I like that a lot. So, in conclusion, why did this whole thing happen? Well, according to Jerry's ex-wife Daryl, she believes Jerry spent most of his childhood coming second to his stepbrother Marvin, which caused Jerry to grow up with a deep desire for money, power, and status. And in the 90s, Jerry used this scandal to get exactly that. As for everyone else involved, some were simply greedy and couldn't see beyond the dollar signs. But to quote ADA Mark Devereaux, quote, The truth of the matter is, the vast majority of these winners, they're good people. They just did something stupid. Reporting for True Crime and Cocktails. Now I'm craving nuggets.
Aren't we all the
Yeah.
time?
Yeah.
Listen, what a journey. Let's take one more break, hit the can, grab another drink, and we're going to be right back to wrap up our final thoughts and feelings on the McDonald's monopoly scandal on this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. All right, final clap on 3. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing the McDonald's monopoly scandal. What a gift it was to revisit all of this, I got to say. And this has really inspired me. I'm going to rewatch that doc series because I watched it when it first came out, which was a few years ago now. And really, for me, and you said it right off the top, Robin Colombo makes the whole thing for me. She's just such a character. And yeah, from the moment I laid eyes on her, I was like, I want to play her in that movie.
Yeah.
I begged to play her in that movie. This story off the top, which I had no idea about how a woman created the original game that Monopoly was absolutely ripped off of. I understand that $500 back then would have been a decent amount of money, but that's still, to your point, hashtag justice for Lizzie. That is so gross.
Yes.
That this female entrepreneur at a time where, by the way, female entrepreneurs didn't exactly exist, all of her work taken. It's just so gross. And I really want to thank you again for letting all of the listeners know about this woman who, waited until age 44 to get married for the first time. I bet that would be inspiring to so many of our listeners and not at all one of the co-hosts of this show.
I like that you, God, you saw right through me,
I loved
like
it. I can't believe that well, no, let me rephrase. I can believe it, but it's wild to think about the fact that the Monopoly promotion upped McDonald's sales 40%.
Yeah.
And look, I loved the Monopoly games. It was addictive. And it's so sad to learn that for so long, there was absolutely no way to win. None of us would have known this. McDonald's didn't even know this. But for so many of those years, it was being completely puppeteered by this team. It's just wild. But then I also just wanted to give a shout out to another fast food chain and their contest that always brought me a lot of joy. And that would be our down home Tim Hortons and the roll up the rim to win challenge. I loved it.
Of course.
My only qualm also was that you had to literally physically roll up the very tight rim of a disposable coffee cup. You had to get your teeth in there. It was not pleasant. I feel like the McDonald's peeling was a far more dignified way of doing it. That said, I enjoyed myself quite a few free muffins in my high school days. Whenever you said Mark Devereaux, I just heard the voice of Daniel Craig in the Knives Out series going, Mark Devereaux. I don't know why. It's like, it's just a name that it feels like it needs to be read by him always. I like that Doug Matthews, first of all, I love your disdain, but also I love that he showed up in a gold suit, but then called himself the George Costanza. It's like, I don't know if that was a George Costanza move. Also, I don't know that anyone can name themselves the George Costanza of a group. Who else is in the group, I guess, is the other question, but
he also apparently showed up to the first day of the trial in that gold suit, and Devereaux made him leave.
That's the Devereaux we know and love.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Operation Fart Attack. I'm just going to say it now. I know that I'm going to be getting requests for merch. I know it. Operation Fart Attack is one of my favorite things you've ever said. I like the fact that they called the fake production company Shamrock Productions because it feels like Shamrock Shakes. I thought that was clever.
Yeah.
You're going to love this. Now, I want to preface this by saying I am making a joke and I am not in any way saying that this is true. But the fact that that man's story was that he dropped his copy of People magazine in the water, threw it out, and then had to get a new copy. I was just like, I just don't know that I've met a lot of men typically that are that invested in making sure that they get that week's People magazine news. You know what I mean? Like, Of course there are men who are. I'm not saying that that isn't true at all, but it just tickled me at first because when I heard it for the first time, I was like, well, that would twig. If I was the FBI agent, I'd be like, something's off. Something's off with that.
I can't let go of the fact that he says he threw out his towel.
Yeah, it just felt like, again, the details of that early, it just didn't feel right. It
Yeah.
just didn't feel
He
right to
was
me.
also like very proud of himself for how much he pulled it off, pulled the wool over their eyes. And it was like, Michael, you didn't. And then he also thought that the young, adorable blonde McDonald's employee, Amy, maybe liked him a bit because he
See,
thought
that's the
she
other
was
thing. I
being
was like,
flirty. And it's like she was being nice.
well, that's the other thing too. Like, I don't want to assume about his sexuality. I wasn't going to go there, but it did feel like, I remember when I was watching it, did feel like he was potentially a heterosexual. That's how he
Yes.
seemed. And again, he was obsessed with this woman having a crush on him. And that's really the part of it too. I was like, if this was, someone who is not was a heterosexual man, yeah, the People magazine thing wouldn't twig me as hard. But again, it was just like, and also, by the way, to your point about the towel, if this is a straight dude, no offense, guys, but I don't know that I've met a lot of you who are really good at taking care of your towels. I feel like you're going to reuse that thing over and over and over again. It's going to stink of mildew before have someone into your life that gives you a rescue 911 of your towels. Like, I'm just going to say it. Sorry.
Yes. Oh, yeah. He's not
Again,
throwing that out. That's also his bath towel. Like,
exactly. This is bath
no
towel.
way.
He's had it for 15 years. Like, it doesn't get washed. That's probably the salt water maybe made it start to disintegrate because it had never felt cleaner before. Yeah. Again, like, I'm not saying that all straight guys, I get it. There's a lot of you who don't. But again, the point of the joke is just that I've had a lot of dealings with a lot of straight guys in their towels, and they're, just know, guys, challenge yourselves.
Yeah.
Be better.
Well, hey, to quote a movie that I love, called Dedication, I have a towel I can't throw away because I think it has feelings. There's a whole scene that Billy Crudup does that is so charming and endearing, and it's hard to like him, because the character's an asshole, and because the actor is as well. Hashtag,
Justice for Mary Louise Parker.
100%.
Yeah.
But that scene he delivers. I could watch that scene over and over again, but
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. I also just have to give a shout out to Christy Oxborrow for pointing out what the cover of the People magazine was that week, knowing that it was 4 missing women, and giving us an update. She never ceases to amaze at her attention to detail, especially if it's true crime related. Him saying that he was going to buy a boat and name it the Reckless Scoundrel. Then I just said, boat names? Like when we went into racehorse names, this is a game that I'm shocked we haven't played yet. And then I was like, what would I name a boat? And then I was like, I don't know, the Stardust Filibuster.
Oh, I want to get on board that.
Right?
I like that a lot.
Yep.
Oh, mine would be dirty.
Gargantuan Promise.
Gargantuan Promise? Oh God, I'd be the one that would be like, come aboard or something stupid. You know what I mean?
CUM? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, of course. Oh God.
And then you're like, oh my God, they misspelled aboard. It says come abroad. Oh dear. Oh dear.
But I'm abroad, so it works out.
Oh. Anyway, we gotta put a pin in this because we've got to get back into that at some point. The detail of a random person grabbing the check at the beach. So many things here. Did they think that bank was going to cash in a novelty check? Like, this person has to, that's just so. Yeah. Also, by the way, hard to hide. Big item.
Yeah. What was he going to do? Fold it into like 80 squares and stick it in his pocket?
Kind of like carrying a surfboard. Feels like it's going to make you stand out. Novelty check and all. Again, what are the chances? That's the other thing. What are the chances that, again, in this story, much like you were saying at the end, where it's like, and believe it or not, his son has worked for McDonald's. It's like the turns in this story just never cease to amaze.
Yeah.
I love you just calling out. Yes, it is Jerry. It's the same man. I'm not going to make you sit on this like the documentary made it. Shout out to McDonald's. I know we talk about them a lot on this show, but shout out for them to make good on the Children's Hospital donation, even though, of course, that was puppeteered by our perps here. I think it's nice that they gave that money to the Children's Hospital regardless.
Yes.
What else have I got here? Oh my God, there's so many things. The thing that strikes me throughout this entire story is how brazen they were. The fact that you find out eventually he meets this man at an airport, or sorry, this woman in an airport, and then makes her cash in a winning piece within a couple of weeks. The fact that he met a complete stranger in the airport, and the fact that none of those people were actually the people who had this whole production come down. It's wild to me again that who was it? It was a Nana who wanted more time with her grandbaby. That is who took this whole thing down. The idea again that he would just find these random people and that they would be on board. There's just so many ways and times where this could have gone completely wrong. And it never did. And it's just fascinating to me. Anyway, turning the very classy fuzzy bunny joint into a church. Wowzer. Yes, and I remember in the documentary too, they talked about the thought that maybe Robin was trying to have him killed. And the reason she took the baby out of the car seat in that moment was because she knew the train was going to hit the car. So that was like proof that she was trying to have him killed. I don't know if I buy that. That feels, to your point, like a pretty big risk. Like you got to make sure the placement of that car is in the right place. Like there's a lot of room for, I don't know if I buy it.
Oh no.
I don't know if I buy it.
I think many things about Robin, but I don't believe that she would try to have somebody killed.
Yeah. And even still, I just think she has, you're going to love this. I think she has resources if she did that she wouldn't have to implicate herself and potentially her child in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think if she wanted, look, I'm speculating here. I'm not suggesting, but she just strikes me as the kind of gal that if she really wanted someone to be killed, I feel like she may know who to reach out to. That's a full speculation. I don't know.
Sure.
I'm just saying, I don't know that she needs to like be involved in it herself is my point.
You also think she couldn't just say like, hey, Uncle Jerry, he's been doing some stuff.
It feels like Uncle Jerry.
He's been running his mouth. Like
it feels, this is my point. Like ways. I think she had ways and Uncle Jerry was deeply invested. Yeah. I don't buy it. Again, the fact that Jerry's sixth wife would have gotten that call about the wiretap, but was out sick that day. The details, again, like the way that the stars had to align, the fact that he accidentally got sent the seals. And the only reason he could even pull off this entire thing was because he had this accidental gift handed to him. Again, it's wild to me. I also can't believe that they didn't make some sort of safeguard for when he had to go into the bathroom. I'm shocked that that wasn't a part of the system.
Right? Especially if you're going to have two people of the same gender using different, or two people of different genders using different bathrooms.
Yeah. Like to me, it would be a no brainer that it would be like, no, you have to be in the room. Part of your job.
Yeah.
Completely inappropriate, but.
And if it doesn't work, then sorry, it has to be either specifically a man or a woman auditor. Like you have to specifically choose, because couldn't you, if it's an independent auditor, couldn't it be literally anybody that they pick?
Yes. Yes.
So why did it have to be? Maybe that's part of why she was chosen.
Well, yeah. And I mean, now when we live in a world where of all gender bathrooms, it feels like she could have gone in with him. I guess then it becomes an HR issue where it's like part of your job description is that you have to let someone be in the room while you use the bathroom. Maybe that's a whole, maybe that's a human rights thing that they're not allowed to do. I could see that being a human rights thing. You're not allowed to cross. But then to that, I would say it has to be in view. Person goes into the stall and you have to see the briefcase on the floor because it's not going to be a short handcuff. I have to believe there's a little bit of leadway on there, right? Like
there has to be.
So again, well, there you go. Doesn't that solve the problem right there? The person can be in the stall alone, but the briefcase has to be in view. Done. I just solved the problem.
I'm also wildly fascinated. Like, did he just walk through security still with that? Or did they make him take it off, put it on the little belt, have it go through, and then reattach?
Great question. Because that's another place where if he had somebody working for the TSA on his side, they could have done a switcheroo.
That is true. Oh my God, a different briefcase.
Not that I'm suggesting that the TSA can be bribed. I'm not, but I'm saying this guy ran deep. Who knows who he has on his side? I don't know.
It's true.
The detail also that Jerry cooperated with the FBI, and I'll say it, ratted out everybody else. Doesn't that just feel like it speaks to who he is so deeply?
Yeah.
I can't. Again, the details of this, I forgot how much the details of this story truly fascinated me, because it is an unbelievable story at every turn. It's like, I can't believe, like you were saying, it's like, I can't believe they accidentally faxed FBI documents to a newspaper. Like, these details are just insane. Most cases, this is like Abducted in Plain Sight, where we were talking about how most cases don't have that many like shock moments. This is another one, I think, that has a lot of shock moments.
100%.
A lot of what? Yeah, him selling pieces to random people, so much room for error, so brazen.
Yep.
So brazen. It's crazy to me. 5 sugar and 10 cream. That is, look, you know what he needs to do is he needs to go somewhere and order a latte. He needs to order a latte. He wants it real milky. You need to go order a latte. Order a sweetened latte. Go get a vanilla latte somewhere, sir. Not going to be made with full cream. I, as far as I know, they make lattes typically with whole milk, but I feel like it'll give him the same thing he wants.
Yeah, because he wants the just lightest, just a smack of coffee.
Right. Well, then you can also get, I think it's like a cafe misto. At least it is at Starbucks, where it's made with coffee instead of espresso. There are options for him, is my point. I worry about his heart health. There, I said it. A lot of cream.
Yeah.
That's a lot of cream to be ingesting every day.
Yeah.
Mark Devereaux. I just wrote it down again. And look, yes, I absolutely love that you, of course, knew immediately who I wanted to play in this movie. Yeah, the detail of the towel as a tissue, there was so much. But I will be honest with you, yes, Marcia petting that the small dog was a close second for me. I don't know what the status is on that movie. I should really look into it, because last I heard it was going into production. So there's no reason not to look in and try and throw my hat in that ring to play a aged up Robin Colombo, or rather, I would be aged up.
It makes sense to make that a movie, because everything that happened, you'd be like, oh, that wasn't possible. That's just part of the movie. It's like, no, it did happen.
Yeah. Then we could do one of those fun true crime movie times that you do, where you could point out the similarities and say, these details were not made up.
That is true.
Yeah.
Well, now I want it even more.
You and me both, baby.
Yeah.
But listen, I thank you for indulging me and doing this, because I think I had brought it up to you at some point. I just think the story is so fascinating and wild. And obviously, you killed the game, as you always do.
You are too kind. And look, I think I forgot to write it down, but I did. I think this was a patrons poll, because they asked for a scandal.
Yes.
And this is the scandal we opted for. And I'll say,
yes,
I had no idea. I'd never heard any of this.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the wild thing too. Now, the detail, of course, that it all kind of was going down, or like becoming public right before 9/11 makes sense, because I never heard anything about this. And that's what I remember when I was watching the documentary. I was like, how did I not? Because we were old enough at that point. We were, 2001, I was 18. Like, I feel like I was paying attention enough to the news that this kind of level of scandal, I would have thought, also because, deeply invested in McDonald's. If I heard the name, my ears would perk. It's wild to me that it just fell away. But again, then when you hear the detail that it's like, oh, but this happened, it, went public basically right before 9/11. It makes sense that it kind of got buried. But yes, no, this was a patrons poll pick. That month it was themes. We offered 4 different themes. People voted, and then we chose something from the themes of the scandal, which I like. I think that's a fun way to do it, because we get, it's so hard to choose cases. We get a lot of suggestions, and listen, unfortunately, there's a million true crime cases out there. There's an endless supply, which is, of course, the tragedy. But also part of the reason why, these podcasts exist. So there you go. But fantastic work as always. Truly never cease to amaze. Again, your detail about the specifics of the cover of that People magazine. That's.
Oh, if you think there's not going to be a photo of that cover.
I never,
in the case file. I mean, there is.
I would never doubt you. And I'll say it. I was a fan before, and I'm when I didn't think I could be a bigger fan, I am. So thank you for that.
That's high praise. That's high
I
praise.
speak the truth. And thank you, dear listeners, for listening to this truly wild episode of True Crime and Cocktails. If you haven't already, give us a follow on the socials on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails, on Twitter at Not Detectives. And as we mentioned, if you'd like to join our subscription-based series, go over to patreon.com/True Crime and Cocktails to learn more about that. And of course, the only place to find official True Crime and Cocktails merch is truecrewmerch.com. So check that out as well if you're interested. Christy, do you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
On the next True Crime and Cocktails, Patty Hearst.
This is going to be an interesting one. Cannot wait. I know a lot, but I don't know a lot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know nothing.
Those. Well,
I mean, I know bare bones.
Of course.
But.
Of course. Yeah. Well, listen, do you want to say goodnight to the people?
Because I feel like I screwed up earlier. Good night, Callum Keith Rennie.
Good night, Mark Devereaux.